Hi, I'm Rachel Davis, and today I will be interviewing my granny Bridie McCarthy. I will be asking her about her parents, my great-grandparents, who both worked in the cable station. This is for the Valentia Island Heritage Week. So, let's get started. What were my great-grandparents' names? So, your parents?
My mum's name was Johanna O'Gorman and my dad was Patrick McCarthy.
Will you tell me when she was working there?
She was working the cable station from 1927 to 1939, and Daddy was working the cable station from 1930 until 1963 when it closed down.
Really?
Yeah.
So he was there until the end?
Yeah. And his dad was working, I don't know quite when he joined it, but I know that he was there in 1925 because I have a letter that he, from his boss at the time, who was, I think, Mr. Richards. And he would have been the superintendent back then.
Okay.
So my granddad, who would be your
Great granddad, yeah.
Yeah, he was working there in 1925.
So when they were working in the cable station, what was their jobs? So
my mum worked in what they used to call it the mess.
And what was your father?
He started off as a carpenter and joiner in 1930, and then in 1943 he became the works foreman, which meant he was in charge of all the outward staff, you know. He did all the houses, cared for them, looked after them, all that type of thing. So that's what he was doing there for that period of time.
And when did they meet? So
I think they met at the dance hall, at the St. Gerardus dance hall, and I think Mummy would have been about 6 months in Valentia at that time.
And did they ever see each other in their job?
Oh yeah, they would have, of course. Yeah, not a lot, because Daddy would have been outside staff and Mother would have been indoor staff. You know.
And how many people worked with them, or who were the people who worked with them?
Oh my goodness, no. There's people I'm trying to think of now. There was Jamie Curran, Bat Curtin, Jas Lynch, John O'Connor,
John Francis Curran.
John Francis Curran, yeah. Who else was there? Oh yeah, there was Mr. O'Sullivan as well. I don't know what his first name was. That's all I can think of now at the moment.
Okay.
Did I say Mr. Moriarty?
No.
This is a letter written to Father in 1949.
So your dad, yeah?
Yeah, and you see it says Patrick McCarthy works foreman. And it says here, as soon as may be convenient after the 1st of January 1950, all stores pertaining to your department will be handed over to you, and I expect the same economy of usage as I would have exercised myself. In general, new material should not be needed where the old is repairable. And this is another one here now. It says 1943. P.C. McCarthy, I have pleasure in informing you the Division Traffic Superintendent advises that your salary has been increased to 200 per annum, effectively the 1st of July 1943. Adjustments in pay will be made on the 31st inst. Your title is changing from workman to works foreman. State Superintendent something Durham.
He must have been very happy, like, that he got...
That was the year before I was born.
Really?
Yeah, that was the year before I was born. I was born April 44, and that was August 43. This one now is to my granddad, I think.
So my
Which would be
great granddad.
Granddad, yeah. April 28th, 1925. And it says, Mr. T. McCarthy, Mr. Burke's title, having been altered to plumber, is now under your direct supervision. If at any time he should be required for works in the engineering department, my approval should be obtained. And that's Mr. Richards. And that's the
Mr. T. McCarthy, what's the T for?
Timothy.
Timothy.
Yeah. See, that's another one like this. You can have take a photograph of. What's this one here now? Oh, yeah, that's his appointment in 1930. It says, Mr. Patrick McCarthy, this is to advise you that your application for the vacant position of workman, carpenter and joiner in the company, well, this is when he applied for the job.
Oh, right, yeah.
In the first place. The commencing salary will be at the rate of 182 per annum, and you should report for duty on the 3rd inst, or as soon as possible after that day. Kindly say if you accept. Superintendent. Mr. P. McCarthy, as works foreman, is entirely responsible for all the work carried out of the station. As such, his orders are to be executed as requested. Any suggestions you may have for the improvement of our property and also for the betterment of your employment you may place before him, and he will then report to me for his decision. Shortly instituting certain weekly routine jobs which may be carried out carefully and without fail. That's Mr. Liddycoat. That's when he worked on all the properties throughout the cable station. They maintained all the houses and...
Are they like the cable terrace?
All the cable terrace houses.
And then
they all had to be maintained. The lawns had to be maintained. The refuse had to be removed. And you'll see in this...
Were they houses? Like, do people live in the cable terrace or...
Oh yeah, all the, what would I say? All the operators. They lived in the houses.
Did your parents?
No, we had our own house. We had our own house. You see, not everybody wanted to live at the cable station. We owned our own house, which was Dungale House, along the seafront. Now that's the beginning of the of Daddy's time in
the works foreman.
As works foreman, yes, because he started in 1943. But I have only got it from 1947.
Yeah.
So you see, it's what he was doing on each date.
Oh, right.
They'll tell you what each person was doing on each date. And you see, this had to be submitted to the superintendent so that he could check out who was doing what. You know? So the painter now, that would be Bat Curtin. And... I think he had John O'Connor with him at a later date, you know, but not in 1947 because he would have been only a young chap then, but later on. And then there was, see, you can see there where they're talking about making repairs to locks and wardrobes, and then for something to the back gate of number 9.
Date.
Yeah. Let's see what he was doing on the day we were born.
That would be interesting. That's your sister.
She was born in August 1948.
Yeah.
So
what day?
The 18th of August.
There now.
Yeah. Roof repairs. That's what he was doing. That's my dad, Patrick McCarthy.
Patrick McCarthy.
That's John Francis Kern. Jas Lynch, and Mick O'Connell.
And that was on their payday, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Daddy was the foreman, so he was signing. He was signing for their wages.
And he
was the secretary. Mr. Tommy Smith, Bat Curtin, Mr. Condon, Dick Smith, Mr. Renwick, my dad, Michael Sugru, Mr. Richards, Mr. Longland, Mr. Grandfield, Des Burke, gentleman I don't know, Mr. Condon, John Francis Kern, Mr. Cornish, Mr. O'Connell, Mr. Dennis, Mr. Kern, Mr. Breslin, Dermot Ring, Des Lavelle, Mr. Graves, Mr. Germ, okay, Mr. Liddycoat, Mr. Bateman. Those three gentlemen I don't know, they could be visiting. And that's Mr. Freddie Mackey.
Thank you, Granny, for that great interview. And I've learned so much about the cable station and Valentia Island. Bye!
You're welcome, Pet.